Today on Locked On Red Wings are Moritz, Seider, and Simon Edvinsson, one of the best pairs in the NHL already. Spoiler alert, the answer is yes.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. Scotty's the host over at Locked On Tigers 2, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. Drew a blank there for a split second. We're good. I am a color commentator for Oakland University, ACHA D1 Men's Hockey. Scotty, off-day episode, and wanted to just take an opportunity to, again, sing the praises of the top pair, while also kind of bringing to attention the inadequacies of the other two pairs. That's a mean way of putting it, but it's just kind of crazy when you look at the competition throughout that lineup, the responsibilities they're given. So we'll talk about that. We'll start off with the top pair and then talk about why it is the way that it is. But first, got to tell you guys, today's episode is brought to you by the college football playoffs. And you don't want to miss a moment of the action once the college football playoff starts. The college football playoff is presented by Allstate and begins with four first-round games, December 20th and 21st on ESPN, ABC, TNT, and Max. A little bit of a change up there. We got something exciting, more sports.
I'm so pumped. I'm so pumped for the playoff, man.
I'm excited too, man. Can't wait to watch Ohio State lose it all. Anyways, Scotty, the chief question on today's episode is, are Moritz Seider and Simon Edvinsson already one of the best defensive pairs in the NHL? And I just want to preface this as to what prompted this conversation was the realization that after the Toronto Maple Leafs hockey game, according to Puck IQ, Moritz Seider and Simon Edvinsson are the only defensemen in the NHL who have spent over 50% of their time on the ice this season against elite competition.
Wild.
The next closest defenseman is Jacob Slavin and Brent Burns of the Carolina Hurricanes at 46.9 and 46.9. And after that, it's a steep drop-off with Hampus Lindholm coming in at 44.7. So they have a 3% and a 6% lead on the next defenseman in that category in terms of quality of competition, time spent against elite competition. And so when you take into account the type of competition, the types of deployments that they're given, especially with one of them effectively being a rookie, is it far-fetched to say they are already one of the best defensive pairs in the NHL?
I don't think it's far-fetched at all, and I'm sure we will talk much more in depth about some of the analytics behind it and why. I think it's really awesome and also frustrating at the same time. It's obviously not frustrating that they're great. It's really awesome that they're great, and it's something that we have talked about a lot on this show. I remember being hesitant to make that a pair when it first happened, at the very beginning of the season, for a multitude of reasons. And one of those was because that's a lot of responsibility to put on a rookie. And another one of the reasons was because even if he is the second best defenseman on the team in Edvinsson, that you may be putting all your, eggs in one basket. And then it's kind of tricky to have good defenseman depth and whatnot. And I think that's where the frustration lies. Like it's so awesome to have an elite top pair. And I genuinely think that that's what the Wings have. They have an elite top pair, and the forwards that usually play, or at least get a lot of minutes with that pair, are some of the best defensive forwards on the team too, for the most part. And so it's nice to have that at the top. The issue lies with the rest of the lineup card and how poor defensively, again, not only the forwards are as you get down the lineup outside of, like the shutdown line, quote unquote, at the that sometimes suits up at the third line, but defensively, you're talking about just really rough play in pairs 2 and 3. So very long-winded, very rambly, I know, but like, no, it's not far-fetched or jumping the gun or whatever you want to say to call them one of the best pairs in hockey. It's just, it's also, I don't know about come at the expense of. At the end of the day, Yzerman put the roster together, but it's just frustrating that that's kind of it.
Well, and you raise a lot of really good points too about talking about the rest of the defensive core, right? Because it is kind of ridiculous that they are number one and by a wide margin like that. Like 3% is not a small margin. Like
Right.
that is a sizable margin to be leading in the category and time spent against elite. And especially with the bulk majority of the zone start share, once you take neutral zone and out on the fly starts, when you just do offensive zone versus defensive zone starts, they get the bulk majority of the defensive zone starts on this team while being the number one pair, playing against the best players in hockey. For them to be relative to their teammates, hugely positive in the Corsi category, but also not to mention that as a pair, Scotty, amongst defensemen with at least 200 minutes played, amongst pairs with at least 200 minutes played at 5-on-5, they are 10th in goal share. So they are the 10th best team, best pair in the NHL with at least 200 minutes. Because there's, I want to separate this from the guys who have played like 5 minutes in the NHL this season.
Right.
Amongst top 4 caliber defensemen in the NHL, amongst those pairs, they are 10th in goal share. And that's goals for and goals against combined. It's a goals for divided by goals against. They've only given up 9 goals against as a pair at 5-on-5 this season. 9. They've allowed more than that once you can individually at all strengths, and when they're separated. Because again, they didn't start the season together. But as a pair at 5-on-5, they've only allowed 9 goals all season. That is incredible when you consider the fact that they get all of the defensive zone deployments. They get over 50% of the time on the ice they spend against the elite competition. It is insane how good they are performing with how much they are responsible to, how much burden they're responsible to carry in the defensive zone and on this hockey team. They, as a pair, have an expected goals for percentage at like 51%, which amongst pairs over 200, with over 200 minutes spent, is about middle of the pack. But when you look at this team as a whole, for that defensive pair to have a 51% expected goals for percentage at 5-on-5 on a team whose expected goals for percentage is, let me double check here so I say it properly, is 24th, is crazy. To have a Corsi for percentage above 50% as a pair on a team whose Corsi for percentage is 28th, like this pair goes out there, handles the toughest minutes in the NHL, getting solely defensive zone deployments at 5-on-5, and be as dominant as they are. I do not think that it is far-fetched in any stretch of the imagination to say this is a defensive pair that is one of the best in the NHL, at the very minimum, one of the best defensively in the NHL. Maybe the best defensive pairing in the NHL. Offensively, yeah, there's still a lot more to give, but that's primarily because they don't get gifted with offensive zone deployments like the other two pairs do, and that's what you hinted at that, and I want to talk about that in segment 2. But it is absolutely insane that, and I understand Seider's getting paid a lot of money, but there's a lot of defensemen getting paid a lot of money not asked to do this. They've been incredible, and so I just want to, in a season where not a lot is going right, that pair is going extraordinarily well.
Yeah, and which is good. And the fact that we can take anything positive out of this really rough start to the year, I think is a great thing. For me, like Edvinsson is hopefully going to be here for a long time, and Seider you have now locked up for a long time. You need to realize that the window is now, and like that's that's a much bigger picture conversation just around like the entire team, not just the blue line. But like you cannot continuously piss away, like, again, one of the best pairs in the NHL like they have in the first half of this season. Now it's very early on in both of their careers, hopefully, and there's going to have plenty of time to make that happen. But it's it's awesome to see, but again, like in my head, I can't get like the frustration factor out of it, where it's like, this is best case scenario going into the year. We were worried about the blue line, and the top pair has ended up being elite, and the other two pairs are just so bad that it just doesn't even matter to an extent.
Right.
Like legitimately, like I think there's an argument that it literally doesn't matter, like purely in game. Like it doesn't have any effect. It doesn't stop other teams from putting up 4 to 6 goals. Like it's frustrating.
Right. And, I was just, while you were talking, I was toying around with it. Their goals against per 60 at 5-on-5, Scotty, amongst defensive pairs with at least 200 minutes, again, top 4 pairs, is 5th. 1.15 goals against per 60 minutes. That's 5th. It's only behind Middleton and Faber, Broberg and Falk, Byram and Dahlin, and Benoit and Timmins. And a lot of the reason why those pairs, especially Byram and Dahlin, a big reason why their goals against per 60 is so low, because they get primarily used in the offensive zone where they can thrive. They force feed the Red Wings top pair in like minutes in the defensive zone against they're so good. And everything that you just said is 100% accurate. And I want to talk more about that in more depth in segment 2. So stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. Got to talk to you guys today about Bilt. Today's episode is sponsored by Bilt Rewards. If you're a renter, listen up. This is a total game changer. Thanks to Bilt, you can now earn points on rent payments just like you do with groceries or travel. Paying rent now comes with serious perks, and it is completely free to join. Earn valuable Bilt points on your rent and everyday spending at no extra cost. Redeem points for flights, hotel stays, and even future rent payments with over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels in their program. The possibilities are endless. Access unique experiences that are exclusive to Bilt members. Start earning points on rent today by joining Built.com/LockedOnNHL. That's joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNHL. Make sure you use our link so they know we sent you. Don't wait. Start earning rewards today. Today's episode is also brought to you by Select Quote, the World Series, Super Bowl, the Olympics. The world's top athletes get to play in these top level sporting events thanks to one thing: teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. Select Quote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when you're shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safely in your family's end zone. Other life insurance brokers offer impersonal, one-size-fits-all policies that may cost you more and cover you less, while Select Quote's licensed insurance agents work for you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. Head to SelectQuote.com and a licensed insurance agent will call you right away with the right policy for your life and your budget. SelectQuote. They shop, you save. Get to the right life insurance for you for less at SelectQuote.com/LockedOnNHL. Go to SelectQuote.com/LockedOnNHL today to get started. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. All right, Scotty, you've mentioned it a few times, and you are 100% correct. As fantastic as it is that Moritz Seider and Simon Edvinsson are capable of doing this with historically difficult deployments and a bulk majority defensive zone deployments versus offensive zone deployments, it is also, and I think I said this last season when talking about Moritz Seider and Jake Wallman, it is also a cry for help. Because while it's fantastic they've been this dominant, this should not be the case whatsoever. And there were a lot of moves made in this offseason to try and help alleviate that pressure and make this team a better defensive team. Cutscene, they have worse defensive pairs than they had last year. And at some point I want to bring up the Carolina thing because I did mention that Brent Burns and Jacob Slavin are second in the league in elite competition faced. And there is a very clear, correlation doesn't always equal causation, right? It could be coincidence, but it is crazy when you look at it. But you brought in Erik Gustafsson to be a Gostisbehere light, to provide some of the offense, but provide better defense. He has not done so in the slightest. Ben Sherratt and Jeff Petrie are still your second best options at defense, and that is not a good indicator of good roster management. As good as they can be at times, they are not second pair caliber defensemen at this point in their careers. Your third pair is borderline unplayable to the point that they are the most sheltered defenseman in the NHL. That is the flip side of the Edvinsson Seider conversation. If you go back on Puck IQ and you filter it by the defensemen who face the most time on the ice against gritensity, which is their nice way of saying bottom six caliber players, they lead the league. Erik Gustafsson is the most sheltered defenseman in the NHL by time on the ice against the bottom six at 57% of his time on the ice coming against the bottom six. Albert Johansson, in his limited 109 minutes, is second at 56. And not much further down the list is Justin Holl at 48%. So the main reason why Simon Edvinsson and Moritz Seider are so shackled, and even Jeff Petrie and Ben Sherratt to a certain extent, who are often overexposed and look overmatched, is because they don't have a bottom pair that can take on any whatsoever difficult deployments. They get primarily offensive zone deployments almost exclusively. They don't trust in the defensive zone, any of those three guys. And they play only the softest competition. So it's kind of, we always joke about the trickle up, right? When you get better players for the depth and it'll trickle up to make everyone else better by easing up. It's done the opposite. The deployment for Moritz Seider and Jake Wallman last year got close to 50, but never crossed it, and we were crying for help then. This year, they have officially crossed 50 because the depth has gotten worse at playing defense, and Lalonde trusts it even less, and that is unacceptable. The only reason Seider and Edvinsson look so much better with those minutes is because Seider's another year older, and Edvinsson can handle those minutes a heck of a lot better than Jake Wallman. As good as Jake Wallman has been at producing points in San Jose, he's not getting the same degree of difficulty of deployments as he got in Detroit. He with Detroit was not a top pair defenseman. He would have been fine, maybe second pair, definitely third pair. But the only reason this top pair looks as good as it is because Simon Edvinsson and Moritz Seider are who we thought they were.
Right, and I think that is kind of like what I said earlier, man. Like it's just it's great to see, but you're watching the games and you don't feel like, oh wow, like this is this is a lockdown defense. You never feel like that when the Wings play, and it's great that they have an elite pair, and hopefully they can build around that, and hopefully they can provide depth. But there is such a lack of depth on the blue line that you bring up the deployments there. It has completely made it so that those two guys cannot produce anything on offense unless Seider's on the power play, right? Like they can't apply any. So now you're relying on Sherratt and Petrie to provide offense. I know we just had a 2 quote unquote goal game from Jeff Petrie, but like on a night to night basis, like you're now in a position where you have to rely heavily on either your second or third pair defensemen to provide offense and to be kind of, either quarterback or just really provide any amount. And we thought it was going to be Gustafsson. That hasn't been the case, obviously. Like it's you're between a rock and a hard place. You either take a pair that's been one of the best in hockey and you let it play more in the offensive zone. It'll produce a little bit more offensively, but then you're putting, this bottom four that's been a train wreck in the defensive zone more. Or you just completely sacrifice your offense. I guess I shouldn't say completely sacrifice your offense. They're defensemen and non-offensive defensemen at the end of the day. But like you are taking a big hit out of your offensive production by doing the same thing. And I think there's a direct correlation to the fact that our two best defensemen don't ever get deployed in the offensive zone, and the reason why this team can never maintain possession in the offensive zone consistently. Yep. There's no way that's not a direct correlation. Like if we had two of our best players, I don't care what position they are, on the ice in the offensive zone, maybe we'd be a little better in the offensive zone. I don't know how that's not a wildly, I don't know. I just get very frustrated with the notion of like, it's been great. I want to celebrate them. I want to talk about how great they've been. but I think it's impossible to not bring up the fact that the way they are deployed and the lack of depth behind them has made it, and one is the cause of the other, arguably, has made watching these games unbelievably frustrating.
You are 100% right. Like, it, as great as they have been with what they've been tasked with, it does actively hurt the top pair that they're not given opportunities in the offensive zone. Like, if we had a better second and third pair, if the Red Wings had a better second and third pair, you could use Moritz Seider and Simon Edvinsson in more advantageous situations to score more goals. And the team is objectively hurt by the fact that they can't play their third pair in the defensive zone. Because what that means is now Sherratt and Petrie also have to take on more responsibility. And we've already, like, I don't think they'd be nearly as bad if they weren't asked to take on as much responsibility as they had to either. They're clearly overexposed as well. And, like, if you talk about how good Edvinsson and Seider are in that same list of defensemen who have played at least 200 minutes, right? The pairs who have played at least 200 minutes, Sherratt and Petrie rank at the bottom of all those categories I just listed. So in goals percentage, goals share percentage, Sherratt and Petrie come in at 53rd out of 62 defensive pairs who have played at least 200 minutes together. At goals against, if you want to look at their goals against, they rank 12th in 7, so 12th most out of all those defensive pairs with 17 goals against at 5-on-5, of course. So, like, they are, and this is a defensive pair that's given a lot of offensive zone time because Edvinsson and Seider take on so much defensive zone time. So, specifically because the third pair can't take on any defensive zone deployments or any tough competition, it forces not just Seider and Edvinsson, who are excelling despite that, it forces Sherratt and Petrie to take on more too, take on minutes that they can't handle either. And it's hurting them tremendously as well. I'm not trying to defend them because they don't play great either, but I think that they'd look better if they also weren't saddled with more than they could carry. Yeah. So it's just one of those things, like, you're 100% right. As much as we want to celebrate the top pair, they could be even better if we had a third pair that could play any semblance of NHL defense. Like, I'm sorry. I hate to say it like that, but they are given the softest competition. And let me say this too, like, the bottom pair those players on the bottom pair are near the top of the Red Wings statistical charts in Corsi for expected goals for percentage, but that's not really so, like, they're playing all right in those situations, but they freaking better considering they're getting the softest deployments in the league at defense. Like, if you're getting the softest deployments in the league at defense and you're not at least close to leading your team in those statistical categories, then you shouldn't even be in the NHL. So, like, yeah, they're playing fine given their deployments, but they're given the softest deployments in the NHL. And if we could give the third pair how much better could Seider and Edvinsson be if they could get offensive looks consistently, if they could be used in both zones? Like, we are seeing one half of how good they truly are because we can't afford to take them out of the defensive zone. It's crazy.
Agreed.
All right, let's go to segment 3. And when we return, Scotty, I'll ask the question, how or can you fix that? Stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. Get ready to tackle the NFL action. It says get ready to tackle. We're already tackling the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports bet. When you are a new customer and bet $5, you can get up to $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Don't do it. He wasn't even thinking about it. Okay, good. Whew. Scotty,
you didn't say it like weird that time.
No, I was trying to burn through it to get back to the conversation. But before that, man, the heck, the Lions can't catch a break, dude. It finally felt like it was our year, and now it feels like it's just gone. Like, how do you overcome that? Speaking of defense, how do you overcome that?
We're all right.
I'm panicking.
Still the best offense in football. Even it was still. Scoreboard ended up being actually a decently close game still, even despite. And that's the guy who's going to win MVP. We'll be all right.
I'm sad. Scotty, all right, we've talked a lot about the defense, what's fantastic about it, what is really scary about it. How do you fix the deployment problem with the Detroit Red Wings? Can you fix the deployment problem with the Red Wings?
I mean, like I said earlier, I think it's a give and take. Like you can try different stuff. You can try to deploy them more in the offensive zone and give Sherratt and Petrie more responsibility defensively. That I'm not sure that's something that anybody really wants. Like I don't think there is a direct fix midseason. I really don't. I think the fix is get a better second line or second pair. Get better defensemen. Like I know it's very layman and like, you know, we're talking about it. It's not some big thing with some very highly intricate system like that. Until they get better defensemen to play behind them, I don't think you can.
Yeah. No, I 100% think you're spot on. There is no fix this season. This fix has to come in the offseason. With Jeff Petrie's contract being up, you know, likely you would see him walking away. He's the only one whose contract is up, I think, on the defensive end, right? Because Justin Holl has one more year on his contract. Jeff Petrie or Ben Sherratt will have another year on his contract. Gustafsson will have another year on his contract. So, like, you have to make a change via trade and then maybe sign a free agent or call somebody up. I don't think ASP is going to be NHL ready this offseason because, you know, he's an offensive first defenseman playing in a huge rink in Europe. I think he's going to need a year in Grand Rapids to adjust it, you know, North American-sized ice. But maybe Antetokounmpo can come up as a right-side D-man. And because he's a big guy who's got a big shot, maybe he can help be your solution. I don't know. There's no one in the system right now that I can assign as this is the solution for next year. Like, I feel like the solution has to come from outside the organization, has to come through free agency, has to come through trade. But we also have a track record of signing defensemen that do not help the situation. And that's not those players' fault. That's again, pro scouting and Steve Yzerman problem.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're gonna let Petrie walk and then sign another defenseman that is in his mid or late 30s and has been, you know, exiled from his team and whatever.
Maybe this time we'll trade for Jacob Trouba. The third time's the charm.
Awesome. Yeah. Like 12th time's the charm. Yeah. It's I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, for real, I don't think there is a fix mid-season. I think this next summer that's going to be a pretty big talking point. But, I mean, how ridiculous is it that it's December 17th and we're having a conversation about what the Wings should do in the offseason already?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I did also want to mention, too, because there's been a big to-do about letting Jake Wollman trading him away for nothing, actually giving up assets, and then letting Gostisbehere walk. And I'm not here to defend that. Clearly, that has proven to have hurt this team more than it has helped this team. You know, giving up Jake Wollman for nothing, where he'd be a serviceable bottom four defenseman on this team, when he was on a very serviceable contract as well. Letting Gostisbehere walk, he'd have commanded a lot, and I think that still probably was the right decision. But I'm not mad at any fan who says that, you know, that hurt this team, because obviously he's getting a lot of offense. But I do want to point out that Brent Burns and Jacob Slavin have the second hardest deployments in the NHL according to Puck IQ, and a lot of that has to do with Shane Gostisbehere being fourth or fifth on the list of softest deployments, which is similar to what happened here in Detroit. He's producing at a higher clip in Carolina because Carolina is a better team, but we're very quick to forget how porous he was defensively and how we wanted to move on from him, because oftentimes that defensive lapses hurt this team more than his offense helped. But again, with how poorly Gustafsson has been in replacement, I'm not mad at any fan who says that we should have kept Gus. I just want to point out that we're quick to forget what having Gostisbehere on this team meant for Seider and Edvinsson, or Seider and Jake Wollman last season. So it's having the same effect in Carolina that it had here in Detroit, with Carolina having the toughest deployments. Again, also want to point out correlation does not equal causation. That might not be why they're the second toughest deployments in the league, but it is notable that happened. But again, Gustafsson is still producing at a point per game clip. Gustafsson isn't. So I'm just a straw man. I'm grasping at straws on that argument, but it is worth noting that it's kind of the same thing in Carolina, but at least that guy scores.
Right, and I think that's the thing. Like, at least that guy scores. I think I don't regret not holding on to Ghost. I think, again, the issue is the defense that you brought in, which is nothing.
Yeah, I mean, you brought in somebody who's equally, if not worse, defensively, and he hasn't provided any offense yet. Right. So that's why I'm like, people bring up Gustafsson. I'm like, I'm not going to disagree with you. Like, the proof is in the pudding, right? But let's not forget how poor he was defensively too.
That I don't think that's the big picture issue here.
Scotty, practice lines real quickly. Practice lines were Tarasenko, Veleno in for Larkin. Larkin was having a maintenance day. He will play on Wednesday. Derek Lewin confirmed. So basically Tarasenko, Larkin, Raymond, DeBrincat, Kopp, Kane, Rasmussen, Comfer, Mott/Fisher, Bergeron, Mott, and Fisher. Defensive pairings were Edvinsson, Seider, Sherratt, Petrie, Gustafsson, Holl/Johansson, and then Husso and Lyon in net. Talbot skated for about 15 minutes and then left the ice. Kasper is still battling illness. So those are the lines. I think that was the lines that the team settled upon about halfway through the game, and it worked. So, Derek, how Derek Lalonde is. He's going to run it back with whatever seemed to have worked the game before. Yeah,
I think really the biggest thing to watch is Lyon health, Talbot health, and is Marco Kasper not sick anymore? That's going to determine a lot of what we see.
When I do wonder, too, where Kasper is going to slide in at when he comes back. Because right now, Kopp's on the second line, Comfort's on the third line, and Mott is centering the fourth line. Are they going to bump Kasper down to fourth line? I don't think they're going to do that because he's been playing too well. I feel like they're going to put him on the Kopp line between Kane and DeBrincat and put Kopp as the fourth line center because they already have Mott rotating in on winger with Fisher. That's what my gut reaction is.
Yeah, I mean, they have not been shy about moving Comfort down to third or fourth line either.
Same with Kopp. Yeah.
Right.
So, all right. That it?
I think so, man. We ball.
We do ball. We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.